Hello and welcome back to our Angular Beginners tutorial. Today we're going to dive into the world of Angular attribute directives, including ngClass, ngStyle, and ngModel. Attribute directives are used in Angular to change the appearance or behavior of DOM elements and components. Let's get into it. Let's discuss the difference between ngClass and class.myClass directives. The class.myClass directive is perfect for simpler single class toggles based on a condition. On the other hand, ngClass is more versatile. It can take a string, an array, or even an object to apply one or multiple classes based on various conditions. Let's see how these work in practice. Here we have a pre-set up Angular project simply called Attribute Directives. We're running this on localhost 4200. So if we go into localhost 4200, we can see three components are pre-made: demo class, demo style, and demo ngModel. Since we're demonstrating how ngClass works, let's take a look at that component. The first thing we're going to do is demonstrate class.myClass directive. Start with a div, square bracket, class.myClass directive, my class example. Take a look at localhost 4200 and it's displayed. Open the CSS file and add .myClass, and let's change the background color to something like aquamarine. Save that, take a look, it's not working. We forgot to add true since class.myClass directive tests a condition to determine whether or not it should display the class. Save that and we can see that it's working fine. Change that to false and it goes away. Next, we'll demonstrate how to use ngClass passing in a string literal. So type div ngClass equals some string literal name. Now we need to create this class inside CSS. Let's say background color is bisque. Don't forget to add some content. Save that. Taking a look at localhost, we can see that it works just fine. Now we'll take a look at using ngClass, but this time we'll pass in a object instead of a string literal. Let's call this purple BG, and we'll say true for this. And we'll also add red text, also true. Add object class example text. Don't forget to add the CSS classes for purple BG and red text. Go back to localhost and you can see that it works as expected. Next, we'll demonstrate ngClass using a dynamically evaluated object to display a class. We'll do this using a button. So create a new paragraph, create a new button. Let's just say click me. We're going to add a click event that will call a function called toggle button active. Let's go ahead and create this function in the component class. We'll have a condition variable called button active and we'll set that default value to true. So what we want to do is whenever this toggle button active is called, we want to set button active to false, and we want to have an object with CSS classes that are displayed conditionally based on the value of button active. So we'll have two classes, button active and button inactive. So let's make a variable called button classes. That will be an object with classes called button active that will be set to button active boolean, and button inactive that will be set to the opposite. Don't forget a comma between object properties. In the toggle button active function, we will toggle the boolean value of the button active class variable, and we'll say button active is equivalent to not button active. So if it's true, it will get toggled to false and vice versa. We also need to update button classes object whenever this button active class variable changes. So we'll say button classes, we'll pass in the class names as selectors, we'll save that. And now we need to use ngClass directive and we'll pass in the component class variable button classes. Save that. Let's take a look at localhost. That didn't work. Don't forget to add the CSS classes for button active and button inactive. For button active, we'll have a white text color and a blue background. And when it's inactive, we'll have a light gray text color and a gray background color. And we can see that works as expected. Next, we'll see how to use ngClass with a predefined array of CSS class names. Go ahead and add a button inside a new paragraph. We'll say ngClass equals button class array, and we'll just call this button class array. We need to create button class array inside the component class, and we'll just give it some class names. We'll call them orange BG and blue text. Don't forget to define these inside of the CSS. Save your files and go back to localhost, and we can see that it works as expected. Let's move on to ngStyle attribute directive. We'll demonstrate using ngStyle passing in an object whose values are evaluated dynamically. We're going to create a button that when clicked will randomly pass in a RGB hex color to the ngStyle object property. Let's go ahead and create a button whose click event calls a function called setRandomColor. Go ahead and create that function in the component class. Set the button text to setRandomColor, save that. I've asked ChatGPT to generate a TypeScript array of a bunch of random hex colors, so let's go ahead and paste that in. We'll also need to set a random color variable, and we'll just initialize it to the first random hex color inside the array. Within setRandomTextColor, we will need to generate a random integer in the range of random hex color's length, so from 0 to whatever this is. So let's generate a random index, calling math.random, multiply that by the length of random hex colors. And so that we don't get a array out of bounds error, we want to check that the randomly generated index is in the bounds of random hex colors. That shouldn't happen, but it's always good practice whenever doing an array access. If random index is less than the random hex color's length, we'll set the random color to random hex colors at that randomly generated index. Now we have this random color class variable set by this function. Whenever we click the button, we'll use ngStyle with an object to set the background color. Let's save that and see if that works. And it looks like it works as expected. If we refresh the page, we can see that the random color is the same every time because we set the random color class variable to the first position in the random hex colors array. Let's make it so that whenever the style component class is reinitialized, we get a random hex color every time. To do that, we have to implement onInit, and we have to implement the lifecycle function ngOnInit, and we'll just call setRandomColor function. Go back to localhost and refresh the page, and you'll see whenever we refresh or click the button, we get a random color. Now we'll do the same thing, but instead of ngStyle, we'll just do style.className to demonstrate the same thing. Create a button, add style.backgroundColor, and we need to pass in random color here. Don't forget to add button text. We'll just say get random color. Go back to localhost and refresh, and we can see that it works in the same way. Now we'll demonstrate the ngModel attribute directive, which also facilitates two-way data binding, and this is really useful with form elements. We'll use the text input element to demonstrate this. Add an input element. We'll say type is text. We'll say placeholder, enter your name. Don't forget to add ngModel using this syntax. One helpful saying that I've heard for this syntax is banana boat, so it looks like a banana in a boat, so the parentheses inside of the boat of square brackets. And this will evaluate to a class component property, and we'll say username. In order to use ngModel on an input element, you need to import the forms module into whatever component you're using. Go to the module of the component and import forms module. Save that. Now we need to create the username property in the component class. Initialize that to empty string. Save everything. Go to localhost, and you can see that the input works, but we have no way of knowing if two-way binding is working as expected. What we need to do is bind the username class component to the template. Add a new paragraph, and we'll add username here. As we type the username, it works as expected. Let's add one more thing. If the username exists, we want to display it. Otherwise, we'll display nothing, and we'll add hello. Go back to localhost. You can see nothing is displayed. As soon as we type a username, hello username appears. Now we know that two-way binding is working. Okay, that's it for our video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more Angular beginners content. As always, please leave a comment with any questions, corrections, suggestions, or requests for future topics. Catch you next time.